everybody. This is Rabbi Marcus Rubenstein. Welcome to the Daily Derech, a special project of Temple of Aaron exploring Judaism, the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, and the Rabbinical Assembly. Today is the 5th day after Shabbat Kodesh, the 19th of Sivan, 5786, corresponding in the secular calendar to Thursday, June 4th, 2026. We will read Parashat Beha'alotcha this coming Shabbat. Let's begin. Me'am Loez. We'll continue learning Parashat Beha'alotcha and Me'am Loez, and we'll continue in chapter 8. Today we're going to learn some later verses in chapter 8, namely chapter 8, verse 12 through 22. So we're going to learn a lot of verses, and this is basically the ending of the consecration of the Leviim for divine service. So we already spoke about in yesterday's episode, if you were listening, specifically about how the Leviim themselves were waived, that they offer by Aaron, that they offer these bulls, the sin and burnt offering that they had to do, and they were really treated almost like kelim, like vessels themselves. And I think we see more of that language here. One of the interesting things that actually happens towards the end of the ceremonies, when the Leviim are sacrificing the two bulls, one bull as a sin offering and one bull as a burnt offering, we know that one of the sin offerings is to provide atonement for their previous behavior, so they can serve in the Mishkan. But one other thing that really happens, it's so interesting, is that it's not only that the Leviim lay their hands on the bull, but all of Bnei Israel is actually behind them, laying their hands on the Leviim. So imagine this, like 22,000 Leviim with these bull offerings. I mean, so many animals too. And then behind them, in sort of a concentric circle, is all of Bnei Israel laying their hands on the individual Leviim. Now, the question, of course, is why do they lay their hands on the Leviim, and what does this symbolize? Well, this is actually just as the Leviim have to do with the bulls. This is generally what you do with a sacrifice. When you bring a sacrifice, you lay your hands on it, then the Kohen slaughters it, but while you're laying your hands on its head. And this shows that you're designating this as a sacrifice, and you're taking part in this ritual itself. Now, if Am Yisrael is putting their hands on actual Leviim, actually human beings, it is almost as though the Leviim themselves are turning into korbanot themselves and almost sacrificing themselves in the honor of the Jewish people. And obviously, I think this also means that Bnei Israel are sort of putting their trust in the Leviim and saying that they're part of this process, and the Leviim really stand for them. But I think the more radical idea here is that, wow, are the Leviim themselves korbanot, or sacrifices that are offered to Hashem? Why are the Leviim treated like this? Well, it's important to understand sort of where the Leviim come from, right? So one of the reasons we have Leviim in the first place is that when the firstborns of Egypt were killed in the 10th plague in Egypt, there was sort of this that the Jewish people were saved from this plague. That's the whole entire idea of Passover, is that the Jewish people, the angel of death or God, or whoever's doing this plague, passed over the houses of the Jewish people. But this wasn't for free, right? It's not just that now you have to be part of the Jewish people and you have to walk towards Mount Sinai and receive the Torah and everything like that and leave Egypt. But it was also the fact there was also sort of a replacement for this, that if the firstborn children of the Israelites were not going to be killed, there has to be a sort of a replacement for that sacrifice. And the way this was designated is the fact that the Levites themselves, as a people, are a stand-in for that firstborn child who was supposed to die in that plague. And so therefore the firstborn, the Leviim, act as a way of sort of compensating God for not having this loss. And so each of the Leviim don't sort of take part in normal life in the same way as the rest of the Jews do, meaning they aren't allowed to own property, and they have to work in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple. And this shows that they have to dedicate their lives to Hashem. And this dedication of their life to Hashem actually acts as a historical compensation for the plague of the 10th born of the Jewish people surviving that plague and God sparing their lives. So no free gifts, I guess. But I think in a bigger theological sense, what that means is that, like, anytime we're spared, anytime that God is graceful to us and compassionate about us and saves us from a plague, right, we need to compensate God. We need to dedicate our lives more fully to Hashem. And this is the way it was done in the Israelites, that a whole entire people were their entire lives were dedicated to Hashem for the sake of this. So again, we should appreciate Levi'im, and we should appreciate their deep, meaningful sacrifice to dedicate their lives to Hashem. Mishnah Torah. We're going to continue learning the halachot of Talmud Torah. We're in chapter 2, halacha 3, and we're going to hopefully get through 3 halachot today. Woo. All right, let's move fast. All right. Let's continue talking about teachers of children who leaves the children and goes out. And so, again, this helps in the Hebrew a little bit to understand what's going on here. Melamed hatinokot shehu meiniach hatinokot v'yotzei, right? So he's a teacher of tinokot, and he I guess you can say leave the children, but really what it is, it seems to be let the children sort of do what they want to do, right? And sort of let them rule in this regard and say, you know what, I'm just here to, get my payment or to do what I need to do. And I'm just going to let the kids do what they want to do. Because I think probably in the background of this text is that the kids aren't going to be so happy learning so much Torah all the time. And so there's going to be a really great temptation to sort of just let the kids do what they want to do. And specifically leave. Right? So just, let the kids learn. They'll keep learning. I'm just going to leave for a while and do whatever I need to do. I think this will, obviously I think he's giving specific examples here, but what this really means is a teacher who's not really committed to teaching the students in a serious way and is sort of trying to fill time. And so obviously this is a very bad thing to do. And he specifically quotes a pasuk in Yirmiyahu 48:10 that actually says, "Cursed be he who performs God's work deceitfully." Right? So in the external image, look, he's doing God's work. He's teaching the children. How wonderful. But really, he's not actually putting his heart into it and focus into it, and his mind is elsewhere. I think this is a reality. I think in a lot of our Hebrew schools today, obviously the teachers it's hard to get teachers for Hebrew school. It's hard to get people who are really good quality and are really committed to teaching the students. There are obviously really wonderful teachers out there as well. But you can understand that there are teachers who don't really have their mind on the students and aren't really focusing and sort of trying to ask themselves, what's next? What am I going to do after I'm done teaching today? And that obviously is wrong and should be pushed against in all places. Therefore, it's only proper to select a teacher who's God-fearing, teaches them at a fast pace. And I don't think this means fast pace in terms of, just really, really fast, but efficiently, and instructs them carefully with punctiliousness. Now, I think this is so important. We obviously our schools it's very hard to find teachers, and it's very hard to find qualified teachers. So I'm totally understanding of that. But one thing that's really important is that our teachers are God-fearing, right? That the people who are teaching our children are palpably, that you can feel that they take this seriously in a disciplined way, and that they understand that they are doing an awful thing, right? A thing that is full of awe, because it's such an important mitzvah to Hashem. And so therefore they should understand that the teachers that they're influencing the children in such deep ways in the way in which they teach. And obviously God cares so deeply if you're not serious. And look, I think the kids easily learn from a teacher who doesn't seem to care very much and isn't really taking it seriously and isn't really doing it for the right reasons. As a teacher, you are modeling what looking God-fearing and caring about God actually looks like. And so the teachers sometimes and often learn more from the teacher, not from what they say or instruct, but actually in the way they behave. It drives me nuts when you see people, a teacher who, let's say, has a drink of water or has a snack and then doesn't say a bracha over their snack. The kids learn from these things. The kids have to believe that their teachers are authentically religious. That doesn't mean that they do everything right necessarily. They should try to. But that they're sincerely trying as hard as they can, and they sincerely are people who believe in Torah and believe in God. Very, very important. The halachot continue on the fourth halacha that talks about that a man who is unmarried should not teach children because the mothers who visit the children no woman should teach children because the fathers who visit children. I'm not going to go through the exact details. I don't think we hold by this in the same way in the conservative movement of, men being in the presence of women and everything like this in the exact same way. But I think what this is teaching us is that we should be, these teachers should be beyond doubt of that they are not engaging in sexual behavior, God forbid, with students or the parents or anything like this. That shouldn't happen, and we should build our classrooms and build our instructions so it's safe for children, and also make sure that the teachers who are teaching our children are there for the right reason and sticking with it. Now, really fun halacha, and I think the teachers will enjoy this one. A maximum of 25 students should study under one teacher. If there are more than 25 but fewer than 40, an assistant should be appointed to help them in their instruction. If there are more than 40 students, 2 teachers should be appointed. So what's being said here is that there is actually a classroom size that is legislated by the halacha here, that there can't be too many students in one classroom because the idea is the teacher won't be able to teach. And if you have starting at 40, you need actually 2 teachers. And there's also an idea here of teaching assistants and everything like this. This to me sounds extremely modern. And it's amazing that the Rambam is concerned about classroom size and the children gaining appropriate instruction from those teachers. Menorat HaMaor. We're going to continue learning the introduction to the first candle. And another story here about Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. This is really, truly one of my favorite stories. I really, really love this story. And even more than the one we did yesterday. And again, you don't have to listen to the podcast every single day if you don't want to. You can just pick up where we are today. And this is a great example because this is a separate story. And I just love the story. Okay. Every Sabbath Eve, it was the custom in Rabbi Chanina's house to heat the oven and place smoke-producing fuel into it out of embarrassment so that people would think they were baking bread. So basically, obviously Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa didn't have a lot of money, and he didn't have enough money every Shabbos to make bread, which is, obviously very, very little amount of money he had. And he would find stuff to put in the oven that would create smoke to make it look like he was making bread, even though he did not have bread. This is going to be very important. So I don't know if the embarrassment is necessarily out of, Rabbi Chanina, but it might have been about his wife. It might have been about his family. And I think this is so important, even if it's not your necessarily specific concern, because it embarrasses someone in your family. You should go out of your way to do this, and so it's really important to avoid that embarrassment. And this is how important it is to not embarrass people, and certainly not embarrass yourself. So it continues on that there was a certain wicked neighbor who said, "Since I know that she has nothing," and who's the she here? It's Rabbi Chanina's wife. "I will go and see what this is all about." She went and knocked on the door. And so what was the wicked neighbor doing? She knew that, Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Chanina's wife didn't have a lot, and wanted to prove that their neighbor didn't have anything. And out of her jealousy, after her desire to see herself as more rich than somebody else. And so she goes over and does this wicked thing. And she says, "I'm going to really figure out what's going on here." So she went and knocked on the door, and Rabbi Chanina's wife was embarrassed and withdrew into an inner room because Rabbi Chanina's wife thought she was going to finally be found out that she really didn't have, and she wasn't cooking challah on Shabbat and was just making smoke basically, and to show her how little, and that she would go then tell the world about how little she had. But a miracle occurred for her. The oven was found full of loaves of bread, and the kneading trough was full of dough. And the wicked neighbor herself, who takes a look at the oven while she's hiding in the inner room, says, so and so, bring a shovel, for your bread is burning. Right? So she's the one who actually sees how much bread they really have. And there's this great miracle that was sort of done for Rabbi Chanina's wife and Rabbi Chanina to make sure that she wasn't embarrassed. It was taught she herself went in to bring a bread shovel, for she was accustomed to miracles. And she, it's funny. She comes back with a bread shovel because she's like, oh, well, my husband's Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, so oftentimes miracles happen. So I'm guessing she didn't know if the miracle would necessarily happen this time, but she suspected it. His wife said to him, what I love about this is like they get through this situation where it's so difficult and so afraid of being embarrassed, and God does this like wonderful miracle to prevent the embarrassment from Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa's wife. But this does not end. And you think, okay, well, Rabbi Chanina, they'll just keep being miracles for Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa and his wife. But this is not the way it ends. His wife said to him, how long should we continue to suffer such poverty? And Rabbi Chanina's wife is so beautiful here. She says, look, you can't just depend on miracles here. Like, we can't continue living this way. This is not the right way to live. We shouldn't suffer in poverty all the time and be right on the fringe of embarrassment. That's no way to live. So he says to her, what can we do? Right? We don't have the money. She said to him, pray for mercy, that something be given to you from the goodness that is stored away for the righteous in the world to come. Meaning, you can do this incredible miracles. Ask God for something, whatever we need, and God will give it to you. Why do we have to live on a carob, right? Why don't we live on more than that? And specifically to take it from the reward of the righteous in the world to come. Now, what this is really about is the idea that you sort of like have money left over for extra miracles that you can sort of take from the good things you do in this world, from the reward you're going to get in the world to come. And you sort of like have the choice to like take the points you have that we would be rewarded to in the world to come and take it and use it in this world. And that's usually not seen as a good thing, as you're going to see in a second. So what does he do? He prays for mercy. And I love this because in some ways, I think Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa knows not to do this and wouldn't want to do this, but his embarrassment of his wife mattered so much, and that he prayed for mercy. And something like a hand emerged and gave him one leg of a golden table. So he got this leg of a golden table. It's a nice, luxurious thing. But here we go. So he says, later he saw in a dream that all the righteous were eating at golden tables supported by 3 legs, while he was eating at a table supported by only 2 legs. And so Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa sees hell suffer in the world to come and not have the same as everybody else. And so obviously he gets upset about this and says to his wife, pray for mercy that it be taken back. He prayed for mercy and it was taken back. And I think what is going on here is like you oftentimes think that if you get the money and you get the thing that you really want, everything is going to be okay. But it's really not. And oftentimes when God has to work a miracle for you and do something incredible, it might seem incredible at the moment, but in the long term, you're going to regret it. And that God is going to take away. And that's why we should be so not focused towards material gain and luxury. Obviously, you need to have what to feed your family, but you don't need golden tables. And so this is why it's so important. And any extra thing that you get that you don't deserve in this world gets taken from you in the world to come. So you should really never ask for something that you don't actually deserve at this point, because it'll harm you in the long term. And so he prayed for mercy and it was taken back. It was taught the latter miracle is greater than the former, for it is a tradition that from heaven they give, but they do not take back. Yet in this case, it was taken back. And that this was even a greater miracle that God took the golden table leg back after he already gave it, because this usually doesn't happen. Once you make the mistake, it's kind of what it is. But the miracle happened at this time. And I think this is all to tell us that, again, we shouldn't define ourselves by poverty or our station of where we are. We shouldn't define ourselves with an orientation towards getting what we want materially out of this world, but our spiritual goals. But I love how the story really shows how we should take the embarrassment of our partners really carefully, even if that doesn't even match our values, even if we think we might know better. I think taking, especially one spouse's embarrassment, is so important, is really, really important. It takes a lot of empathy, and it's amazing how Chanina was able to do this here.
Well, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Daily Derech. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to email me anytime at rmr@templeofaaron.org. Thank you so much for listening. There are so many people to thank, and you can look in the show notes for that. And also, if you want to know and see any of these texts in the original, we actually have that too. You can actually find that in our episode description. So look in each of the episode descriptions and you'll find that information right there. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.